Hey everybody, welcome to the 32-team franchise update for the quarterbacks of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, it looks like there's a lot of quarterbacks up there, but they did have more stability than led on. They had a few seasons where they've been trying to find their guy and still looking for him. But let's go ahead and get into the details. So first we have Jeff Blake, who was the quarterback I started with, and it was really the end of his career. As you can see, he was with the Jets, Bengals, and Saints before my franchise. He went 2-1, and then the Baltimore Ravens made the trade for Mark Bulger from the Rams, and that sort of changed the trajectory of the Ravens franchise. We look at Jeff Blake's career with the Ravens, very abysmal, 733 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Was supposed to be more of like a bridge quarterback, but I decided to make a trade for Bulger, and it was the best thing I could have done because he was a great quarterback and definitely led the Ravens to a very consistent success. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but he at least was pretty effective as their starting quarterback for many seasons. Then, as you can see, Blake, he had less career stats in my franchise than in real life, so 1,700, almost 18,000 yards. He had 21,000 in real life, 700. More touchdowns, more interceptions, more rush yards, more rushing touchdowns. Then you got Mark Bulger, who was traded for. He was the backup to Kurt Warner, and in real life, the Rams had Warner got hurt, and basically Bulger became the new Rams quarterback. So Kurt Warner bounced around a little bit, where he went to the Cardinals and took them to the Super Bowl and lost. But in this franchise, Kurt Warner stayed with the Rams, and it was Bulger that left. And he went 42-37 with the Ravens. And after that stint there as a starting quarterback for them, a very stable quarterback, they had the chance to get Jamarcus Russell, and so they took it. And that ended up being where their quarterback troubles began. You can see he was 1-6 with the Buccaneers. He was 2-0 with the Saints. Then he was out for 2 years, and then came back as a backup for Pittsburgh and ended his career with the team that he started with, and that was the Rams. He had 15,784 yards with the Ravens, which I thought was pretty good, but I guess it wasn't the same as his NFL career, where he had more success with the Rams, I guess, than with the Ravens. He threw for almost 5,000, maybe a little less than that, yards with the in real life. I threw more touchdowns. I threw more picks. I ran with him more, but he also ran for more touchdowns on his own. And now then, for the reason everything went to shit, is they drafted Jamarcus Russell after they had one of the worst records in the league. And I thought, okay, do they keep Mark Bulger, or do they decide to change the face of the franchise? And so they did. And Jamarcus Russell played fairly well, going 19-26 with the franchise. When we look at his stats, he wasn't terrible. He was 8,200, 64 passing touchdowns, 55 interceptions, twice what he did in real life. But then I sort of played an out of league thing where in real life, that's when about Jamarcus Russell sort of just disappeared from being a real quarterback in the league. And so I kind of made him disappear as well. So I guess that's not necessarily fair to the Ravens, but it is very similar to how it was in real life. He had like a 4-7 record his last season. I just kind of allowed it to end his career with them. And so because of that, they were in search of a quarterback. So Tony Romo was a potential bridge quarterback. He was drafted by the Vikings to be Dante Culpepper's replacement, but Culpepper kept starting. And so he ended up going to the Rams, and he got a chance to start for the Rams, going 14-17 in 3 seasons. He was 2-3 with Baltimore. Then he went to Dallas. I gave him a chance to be Dallas's savior, and he went 10-15. He got replaced by Russell Wilson. He was the backup for Tom Brady in New England for 2 years. Started one game for them, and he won it. Then was the backup for the Chargers, and then was the backup currently for the Arizona Cardinals. Of his 10,837 yards, 1,300 of it came from the Ravens. 13 touchdowns. He had 1 interception, so he did a good job protecting the ball. But when it came down to his career, 34,000 yards, he was nowhere near. Then Josh Johnson was also an option for quarterback for the Ravens. He was a backup for most of his career, going 8-5 with the Ravens, and was backup for the Browns. Every time he played, he didn't do well. That's why when Terrell Pryor went down, they'd signed Vince Young to be the starter for the rest of the season as opposed to Josh Johnson. Johnson there, you can see his my career is a little bit better than his real life career, but not by much. Then Matt Schaub, who made the Super Bowl back-to-back years with the Giants, losing both of them to the Colts. He had a 54-47 record with the Giants in multiple years, went to the Ravens to be their new starting quarterback, and went 1-5. Not great. He went to the Buccaneers, was 1-2 with them, then was the backup in Denver for 2 years behind Bradford, and then he was the Atlanta Falcons quarterback. He was in free agency when the Falcons traded Peyton Manning to the Ravens, which we'll get to in a moment. Jimmy Garoppolo became the starter for the Falcons, and Matt Schaub has the mentor tag, and so I figured let Matt Schaub mentor Jimmy Garoppolo in Atlanta. So he only had 1,200 yards with the Ravens. Most of his 22,000 yards came from his Giants days. Even though he technically had a better stat career in real life, throwing less interceptions and more yards, rushing for more touchdowns, he did make 2 Super Bowls in my franchise, which he never touched in his real career. Mike Kafka, he started the last game of one of the seasons there between 2010 and 2013. He was like a second-round pick as well, or like a third, something pretty high. And he got one start, went 0-1, and that was it. He had 233 yards, which apparently is better than his real life. He has 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, as opposed to never having thrown a touchdown pass in his career and only throwing for 107 yards. Colin Kaepernick then became the quarterback, and so in 2011 he was drafted to the Ravens and was their guy, going 23-29. But in those 4 seasons, he didn't really anchor the job to warrant a bigger contract, and so he ended up going to Washington, where he is actually pretty competitive for the Commanders in the 2015 season. When we look at his career, right now, every stat is with Baltimore. And so his real life, he only threw for 12,000 yards. So he's already at 10,000 yards, and he will surpass that with his Commanders presence. Throwing 67 touchdowns, 54 interceptions, rushing for over 1,100 yards and 16 TDs. He's had a pretty good career in my franchise. He just wasn't able to be the really long-term answer for the Ravens. He wasn't good enough to win enough games. So they decided to go another route. Now, they tried Eli Manning. Now, Eli Manning in 2013 was there. Colin Kaepernick didn't start that season. It was Eli Manning. And Manning was the long-term starter for the Chiefs. Then he went to the Seahawks for 2 years. Didn't really go great, 6-14. Didn't go great in Baltimore. Didn't go great in Green Bay when he went 0-4. And then he's now with the New York Giants, where it's actually going pretty well. He's actually leading in the division so far. It's between the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. When we look at Eli Manning's career stats, he's still trailing his real career, where he was just with the Giants the whole time in his real life. That's not how it's coming out to be in this franchise. So 33,700 career yards, which is pretty good. Most of those are with the Kansas City Chiefs. But then you got 57,000 yards in his real career, and he still has more touchdowns in his real career. We'll see if he can resurrect his career with the Giants in my franchise, but we'll have to see if that actually happens. Then we got Joe Webb. He was 5-9 as a backup with the Dallas Cowboys from 2010 to 2013. Then he went to the Baltimore Ravens, played 3 games, and was 3-0 with them, and he's sticking around as the backup. So, I don't know if he is the backup anymore. I have to double check that. But he has 2,900 yards of his 3,700 yards in his career in my franchise. And as you can tell, his NFL stats versus my stats are completely different. I did so much better with him in my franchise than he did in real life. Then this year, they brought in Derek Anderson. He was 2-2 this season. I actually put stats for him just for that game. I didn't put any of his season stats yet. But he was the quarterback for Denver, made the Super Bowl, lost. He went to Seattle. He went to Pittsburgh to be the backup. If you saw the Bengals video, I talked a little bit about him in Cincinnati, where he went 1-4. Was 5-0 with the Cardinals, which led him to being the starting quarterback for Baltimore. However, during this season, he ended up getting replaced. So I don't have any stats in for him yet. He did play those first 4 games. He has significantly more career yards in my franchise than in real life. But the guy that replaced him was Peyton Manning. So Manning was 125 and 82 with the Colts, played with them from 98 to 2011. That 2011 season, he was out with his neck injury like he did in real life. And so Brady Quinn came in for the Colts and took the Colts to the playoffs. And then the year after that, he took them to the Super Bowl. So how I looked at it was when Brady Quinn took the Colts to the playoffs without Peyton Manning, Jim Irsay had the decision of, well, if we can do that with Brady Quinn, we don't need to pay big money for Peyton Manning. So he let Manning go and tried to build the team around Brady Quinn, which didn't work. But Peyton Manning ended up going to Atlanta, had a good season, not so good season, went 22-16 with them, and then he was like 1-4 or something like that to start this season. And so the Falcons decided to go with Jimmy Garoppolo, sort of like how Denver played around with Brock Osweiler maybe being the starter. And so the Falcons decided to move on from Manning. And so instead of having Manning be a bench quarterback the rest of the season, I looked at teams that could be potential options who are trying to make the Super Bowl or the playoffs. And the division was very winnable. Unfortunately, the Ravens are right now in 4th place, even behind the Browns. And so Manning is trying to turn that around. I don't think he will. So he has no stats right now with the Ravens, but we'll see if he's able to throw for 5,000 yards to try to catch up with his real career. He might retire this year. He might not. So we'll just have to see where Peyton Manning decides to go with his journey. But right now, he's not likely going to make the playoffs this year unless a miracle happens. So when we look at the franchise of the Baltimore Ravens, again, they are a younger franchise because the Browns turned into the Ravens in the late 1990s. So most of these quarterbacks are mine. So we see Mark Bulger is the franchise leading passer with 15,000 yards. Kaepernick right behind him. Jamarcus Russell, who somehow has 8,200 yards, is number 3. Then you got Vinny Testaverde, Tony Banks, and Elvis Grbac. So if you want to pass them, they got to pass for over 7,000 yards. We see even Joe Webb is the 6th ranked passing quarterback for touchdowns in Baltimore's history. So there you have it, the history of the Baltimore Ravens and my franchise. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, a lot more history to come. I'm working through the AFC North. We just saw the Bengals, the Browns, Pittsburgh is next. So hope you subscribe to the channel, leave a like. Feel free to engage with questions or comments in the chat. I always love talking about this franchise and sharing more about what this alternate reality became. And so I'm still working through. I'm in the 14th season 2015 to 2016.